Welcome to our presentation by Blue Case on M&As. I am a multiple survivor of M&As, unfortunately or fortunately, but that being said, I've had some great conversations with both Justin and David. We've had Justin on before, and I can tell you this, anytime I'm on a call with them, I am feverishly writing down notes and typically fill up a page or two of notes just in a half-hour conversation, just about planning on talking about something. So I would say if you're looking to have another voice in your room, whether it be for leadership development and that sort of a thing, or strategic planning, culture, M&As, they're probably somebody that you should look at in terms of getting into your room and working with. And I know a number of our members have, and the results have been great. So I'm excited that they're here. I'm excited about this topic. I'm not going to say much more. I'll jump back on at the end. We'll have about 60 minutes or so of content, and then Q&A. But yeah, let me hand it off to Blue Case. David, Justin, it's all yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Chuck, and thanks everyone for having us here. We're excited to see all you and to have a great conversation today. So this is, we're talking about why M&A fails and what specifically you can do about it. So we're gonna, in our presentation today, we're gonna give you some real tactical tools. But first, just a brief introduction about us. We are the best in the world at building high performance teams, and we wrote the book on it. Our book came out in May of this year, Be a Better Team by Friday. And what we do is we specialize in strategy, culture, and engagement challenges that scaling companies face. We specialize in M&A cultural integrations. And the premise of Blue Case basically is that 70% of your workforce is they're not being utilized. There's innovation, intelligence, creativity that is not being used. It's like having a garage where 70% of your cars are just covered up. Your race cars are being covered up, and only 30% of the potentials online. So the premise of Blue Case is really, how do you take all of that innovation, creativity, and intelligence and put it online? And during M&A, a lot of that creativity and intelligence and innovation goes offline even more because of some of the challenges that we'll talk about. So we do executive team alignment, we do leadership development, strategic planning, M&A cultural integration, and executive coaching. And we are known for igniting motivation, hearts, and innovation quickly to generate great results. A little bit about us. Lisa Jacqueline, who's on our call as well. Lisa is our Director of Consulting Services. She's also a former public and private CEO. She's taken a company public and done a lot of M&A, including international M&A. I'm the founder of Blue Case, and a little bit about me. I have a PhD in a field called high performance psychology. So why do certain teams and individuals perform at exceptional levels, even in suboptimal circumstances? I'm also a father. I have 2 young girls, and I live in Austin, Texas. Justin, do you want to say something?
Hello, I'm Justin Follin. I'm the CEO of Blue Case. I'm also the lead author of Be a Better Team by Friday. I've been doing this work for about 15 years. I've coached public and private CEOs and have worked in some of the largest organizations in the world, as well as our sweet spot focus, which is the fast growth mid-market companies that are up to something big and care about people. It's me. Happy to be here.
Great. So look, today, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a different perspective on some of the challenges that you will face in post-M&A environments. And we're going to talk about why they happen. We're going to have some discussion on that, but you're going to come away with a different perspective than you are coming in with now. And then we're also going to give you some specific frameworks and tools that you can use and be thinking about, if you've gone through an M&A recently, or if you're about to. In terms of, why should you trust us, right? This is just a couple recent results. One of our clients, they grew from 10 million to 1.3 billion. They did over 13 acquisitions. Oftentimes they're doing multiple acquisitions a year. Another company, they integrated 2 very different technology companies. One was completely in office, one was completely virtual. It was $1 billion plus valuation. And the PE firm, which is a top tier PE firm, said it was the smoothest acquisition. A partner at the managing partner at the PE firm said it was the smoothest acquisition he'd ever seen in his career. Another company, 2 years after the deal, after the acquisition was done, they still were almost as if they were two separate companies. There was a lot of conflicts and challenges and silos. 9 months after we started working with them, their ENPS jumped 40 points, which is their employee net promoter score. And then, as I mentioned, Lisa Jacqueline is a real expert in M&A and has a lot of background and practical experience doing it. So that's just a little bit about us. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about the data on what does the success rates of M&A look like. What are some of the challenges that you can expect, and hear from you about what you've seen and what you think. We're going to give you a new perspective about how you see the M&A journey. And then we're going to talk about the two different types of challenges that you're going to face and how you really need to approach them completely differently. And then we're going to move into the how and give you a number of practical tools that you can do to be successful in your M&A. And then we'll end with Q&A and give you some free resources. How's that sound? Good? Cool. So here's what Harvard says: 70 to 90% of acquisitions fail to deliver their intended value. So just let that sink in for a minute. Here's what Bain says, that 75% of M&A see deal failure, delays, reduced value, personal problems caused by issues with workplace cultural dynamics. This isn't about one sector. This is about M&A. So just really take that in.
Want to ask real quick, anyone want to take a guess at what workplace culture dynamics mean? Oh, let me just back up again. Yeah, you can just put it in the chat. That's great. Sridhar says values conflict. Okay, so conflict of values. Anyone else have any ideas about what workplace culture dynamics might mean? Interaction between colleagues, great. Teams don't speak the same language. Awesome. Yeah, Aaron. Lack of cultural integration between entities. Yep. Great, great. These are removing negativity and toxicity. Yep, the negativity and toxicity is all part of this. Awesome. Great answers. One thing I just want to say is if you want to come online, I mean, come on to video, that'd be great, because we're not doing breakout rooms, but we really try to run our conversations as conversations. So we're not doing presentations at you. We're wanting your answers here. So if you come on video, let's talk, let's have this in the room. Love the answers that I'm seeing in the chat. We're going to actually ask for answers on the next question in live mode. So just encourage you to kind of lean in with us here. If you were talking about M&A, it's going to take some leaning in to remove those 75% of culture workplace dynamics. So let's have it be a conversation so we know what's going on for you all. So removing negativity and toxicity, how each company's culture operates, misalignment of priorities, styles, and methods, and you can't get things done. That's it. That's what 75% of M&A failures come from, is these kinds of things that you're talking about. And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so I want to hear from you about, why does M&A fail so often? What do you think the key challenges are? What have you seen?
And if you could, this one, start saying stuff out loud so that I can be writing it out.
Actually, I'm just curious, a show of hands, who's actually experienced mergers and acquisitions? Like, if you could just hold your hand up, or your virtual hand, I'm just curious. I'm just going to scroll through a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So it really looks like, the majority. Great. So what in your experience, why do you think there's so many challenges? Why do you think they fail to deliver their value?
Go ahead, Natalie. Natalie Rosner.
Not there. Natalie?
I'll lead off. I'll tell you, I've been through a number myself, and for me, it's been a lack of appreciation of the individual cultures from the organizations, and typically it's the smaller companies' culture that gets overlooked and abandoned in most cases.
I think to add on to that, it's called M&A. There's very little successful merging. There's an awful lot of acquisition. So there's always a big fish eating the little fish. And I will say that appreciation of why an organization is being purchased, typically the business sense is so prominent that it sort of washes out that personal style component about like, why is this company a good fit and attractive? That typically gets undermined early.
I'll add, I think, related to the cultural bit that was discussed earlier, there seems to be a belief that the acquiree will very readily understand and adapt to the cultural norms, behaviors, language, values of the acquirer. And, we walk them through like presentations and we tell them how great we are. And like, this is our core values, go forth and prosper. And they're still operating with whatever it is that they came from for years. But we believe that it's like, oh, we just gave them a couple presentations and like they should be able to like now fully integrate and interact, even though it took us years to kind of even understand what we're doing, so that sort of mismatch.
Great.
Follow up from what Clark said, the reasons for acquiring a smaller business, and most of us talking about less than 1,000 employees in the acquired business. You acquire smaller businesses for its future potential, not the current revenues. And most deals are financially driven with financial objectives. And the objectives for smaller M&A should be around the people. That's where the value is. And you should be setting objectives that retain expertise, grow, all the people stuff you should do. Keep the retention, keep the business relationships, keep the culture of the teams that really are the essence of the business you acquired. You can integrate a business and sustain the culture of the business you acquired, and you'll take to this. So there are ways of doing that.
I would add lack of buy-in from the employee base of the organization being acquired.
Great. Lack of buy-in.
Yeah, and I would just add, because of that and because of what Clark said about, these are usually one-sided, I think communication is really key. And I think failure happens when there's not kind of over communication about the why, about what's going to happen next, just really clear expectations for everybody.
Great. Let's see, there's a couple in the chat. Oversimplification of synergies, I see. And behavioral expectations are different. Anyone else? Okay, I'm just going to, Clark had communication principle. What's in it for me? Employees need to know what they stand to gain personally. Do I keep my job? Why does this make me better at my job without changing who I am, what I do? Yeah, just in general, also that just fear of what it means for me is a big part of it. Okay, great. This is a great list.
I'd like to add something else too. I'd mentioned, and others have as well, this topic of communication. Even that, this is even us saying that is an example about what am I going to say is what do we mean when we use certain words? So, for example, I recall having a situation where we were in the process of integrating, and we were the acquirer, and we kept harping on certain terms that we wanted the other team to deliver on, things like revenue and margin and things like that, not realizing that in their universe, those things actually have slightly different definitions. Right. And so they were going off and executing on whatever they were doing. And they were like, whoa, that's not what we meant. So this idea of like making sure that you operating on a common lexicon is super key.
Not only the culture of the company itself, acquiring the other company, but the culture from the country that they're coming from. So for example, from Austria, from Germany coming in, acquiring a smaller company in the United States, the way they approach the conversations are quite different and come across quite different. And there's no meaning, there's no issues behind what they're saying. It's how they're saying it in certain instances, for sure.
Awesome. All right, let's move into the next piece. This is a great list. I also see reputation at M&A is only about scale and achieving financial targets, and that results in fear and exodus of acquired employees. So yeah, that fear of what it means for me as an employee is a big one. Okay, all right, let's move on.
Great. So these are some of the other pieces that we said, but you really covered a lot of these. The only one that I didn't necessarily hear on here is that oftentimes right after an acquisition, the best people leave. And it's predictable that it happens. I think a lot of these other ones you mentioned. And then just oftentimes too that there's some tension that really winds up blowing up later. But it's a great list that you said. So here's what M&A looks like. This is sort of a map of when you're going through it, and this is just one map. There's different ones, but this is generally what the key pieces of the process and what you will have plans for as the COO on how you'll be thinking about it and creating accountabilities towards this. And this map, though, is really what it looks like from the outside. This is sort of the observable part of the acquisition. And when you're talking, if you're using a PE or VC firm, this is a lot of the conversations that you're having with them, because this is what they're focusing on in order to make sure that they're able to effectively monetize the deal.
David, just a second. Is everybody seeing the PowerPoint? Are we good? Are you seeing the PowerPoint? Okay, thumbs up. Okay, great. Just got a message yet. Not sure what's up, Chuck, but okay. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Okay. Great. So this is what it looks like, but there's this other piece. Here's what it looks like on the inside. So this is the way to think about this is up here. This is productivity. The deal happens here. When the deal happens, it's an ending, and there's a lot of emotions. There's oftentimes shock, denial, fear, sadness, uncertainty, and then basically what winds up happening is people move into this neutral zone. Watch what happens to productivity, right? They're confused, disoriented. What's this going to mean? Am I safe? Skeptical, apathetic, and productivity drops. And until they can move into sort of a new beginning, where they get excited and energized, productivity stays down here. Now, the irony of this is right after a deal, you have to deliver results in the next quarter. There's more work to be done, after deals happening, and you really need everyone's buy-in. But what winds up happening is you have this huge drop. Does this make sense to people?
I think when you're looking at this, what's really happening is when we say what's happening on the outside. Well, if I take this book and I put it from my right hand to my left hand, you can see that happening. You actually see it's observable that I did that. And that's what's happening at work. Everyone comes in, they do the M&A, they come in and they keep following the processes, they keep doing the job. They're still doing the job that they're doing. And technically, hey, we've got enough people to do the tasks at hand. But when we're talking about what's going on the inside, that's actually what's literally going on inside of the person, of the human beings who are in the actual work itself. And what this is a model of is it is just a human nature that in times of transition, you're going to be dealing with it's tumult. And so, M&A is a financial deal, but it's a major life change. It's a massive life change. And any of you have experienced a massive life change, perhaps in your own personal lives, sometimes it takes months to recover from that. Or we spend more time in our work than we do in anywhere else in our lives. When we suddenly come into an environment where we no longer have the same boss, we no longer have the same employees, we no longer really know what's going on, it's like a grief. It's a huge grief, and that's real, and that's happening. And so what I think is often missed, you guys are pointing to on your chart, is, hey, what's going on with the people inside of the organization, and how do we address that? Because that's actually majority of why M&A fails, and it's not addressed in that external roadmap that we were seeing. So I want to look at the next slide and really just kind of talk a little bit about this. So I think we gave you a pre-read on this. If you did it, I'll be repeating it, but I'll give you a little overview. So when you think about challenges, the challenges that you face, the challenges that you face in your work, there are technical challenges and there are adaptive challenges. And a technical challenge, if I'm driving that sweet car, I need a really good mechanic. There's probably only a few mechanics that can fix that car, but it's a nice one. So I got to go to the best to get that fixed. But there is somebody that would know how to fix that car. There's somebody that I could find and they would know how to fix that car. And if it's an F1, there's a team of people that can fix that car, but they're technical experts. They can fix it. You have an adaptive challenge is, tell me how to fix the traffic problem in your city that's going. And if you're in Austin, tell me how to fix the traffic problem in Austin. We could use your help. The issue is that it's not just a matter of one person writing the right plan. It's actually, there's so many pieces and complexities that it's a constantly evolving problem, and we don't even always know what the problems are all the time when we have adaptive challenges. So in our work environments, a technical challenge, when you're starting to have employee issues, like in an M&A, and you start to see that dip in productivity that's coming naturally because people are confused, scared, grieving, what you're going to see is, you might say, well, what we need is more clear process and procedures, and we need an employee manual. What kind of solution is that? If you say, well, we need a more clear employee manual, what kind of solution is that? You can put it in the chat if you have an idea. It's a technical solution. It's an important solution because if you don't have an employee manual, you're missing something. You need that technical solution. It's absolutely imperative that somebody's making it very clear for your employees exactly what they need to know. Very, very important. Will that solve the challenges that you see in that graph? Grief, confusion, anger, sadness, inability to get things done. No, George says. Yeah, I'll agree with George. It's an adaptive challenge. So an adaptive challenge requires actually changing the way that you work together. And so if you go to the next slide, we'll take a look at that. Technical challenge, any technical challenge that you have are the ones that are easy to identify. There's often an easy solution. It could be complicated, but somebody can do it. There's an expert out there or a team of experts that can do it. And it's going to just require a little bit of change. The employee manual is not going to change how everyone does business. It's just clarifying something, and it becomes a long-term tool. And usually people are happy about that employee manual. Like, yeah, great, we can do that. Let's fix it. And the solutions can often be implemented quickly. An adaptive challenge is very difficult because an adaptive challenge, you don't always know what the problems are. Every single person on your executive team has a different perspective about what the challenges are. And a lot of times you get into arguments about how we should fix the problem. And what's actually going to have to happen is you as a team are going to have to look at your values, your beliefs, your roles, and how do we solve this together, not knowing how to do it yet. And there's a way to solve adaptive challenges that looks very different than, hey, we're having cultural issues. Go tell HR to fix it. You know what I'm saying? Like HR is not going to fix this stuff. It really is going to require you as an executive team to be looking very differently. And I think somebody said it, maybe a couple people said it. I would say one particular adaptive challenge that can be a blind spot is if you are in the big fish company, the parent company that's acquiring, it will seem like, well, everyone should just kind of figure out how to assimilate. And that's where things really get tripped up. You start to see, there's 2 executives from the acquired company on an executive team with 5 from the parent company. Well, guess where the conflicts are? It's between the 2 executives who are from the other company, but just can't even integrate on that team, let alone inside the rest of the company. So it's a matter of everyone having to figure out how to work together. So let's look at the next slide. Real quick. By the way, that's a tool. So I know we were showing a lot of information on the slide, but that was a tool that we're going to send you when we send our follow-up to you, if you want our packet of tools. So that adaptive technical, if we haven't sent that one to you already. So when you look at this, what it looks like on the outside, which is where things are trying to get fixed. Well, if we have a better plan, we need a better integration plan. That's going to make this work. Just the integration plan, just the plan itself. If you're not thinking about the adaptive nature of it, if you're not thinking about the people challenges, if you're not thinking about the neutral zone, which by the way, this neutral zone isn't like a 6-month thing. For some companies, it can be 3 years. We were working with one company. We came in 2 years after they had done their deal. 2 years after they'd done their deal. And I'm standing in the front of the room and I'm there on day 1. And I'm saying, we're going to have an open and honest conversation here. And we're going to really start to figure out how to break down these silos and work together. And it was like arms crossed. Everybody's looking at me, friendly, but they're not happy to be here. If they could have turned off their videos on their screens, they would have, but we were in person, that kind of thing. And they're like, they're leaning back. And I said, we're 2 years later. I said, who worked at company A? Who worked at company B? They all still had their sense of loyalty to their original company. There was 2 companies in that room. They wore one T-shirt. I mean, there was one T-shirt, but there were still 2 companies in that room. What was going on was they were still in this neutral zone, and they may never have gotten out of this neutral zone if we hadn't done something about it, because they did all the right stuff from that first map. They did the right integration. It was a very successful merger. But not from the perspective of performance. And so this is where we came in. And that's where, after we did that first conversation, we did some baseline practices. We started getting and listening to each other. They started to do some of the tools that we were talking about here. And by the end of that day, I saw conflicts that had been going on for 2 years dissolve. And 9 months later, their ENPS score went up 40 points. So it can change. It just requires addressing it. It's an adaptive challenge.
So this is really our assertion that when executive teams treat all problems as technical, M&As fail. And again, there is going to be a huge push from to focus on the technical pieces, because here's your options. You can either create a new employee manual or fix the fact that people are disengaged, like change the culture. And if you're accountable, and your head of people is accountable to the CEO, it's a lot easier to point to, like, here's some technical things that I solved, rather than really taking on the issue, the cultural challenges, and saying, hey, we have this real bear we have to focus on, and here's all the pieces, that whole list that you wrote about the challenges. And I don't have all the answers. We're going to need to figure this out together. We're going to need to learn together. We need everyone's help to do it. There isn't one way to do it. That's a lot. It's a totally different way to think about and lead. I was in San Diego after a deal had just been signed, and it had been months it had been 6 months of planning. They had they had incredible plans. They even hired a big, 3 consulting firm to come in with all the project management. So there was a huge amount of planning. This is a top tier PE firm. And we had a dinner with the new executive team. So the executive team, basically about half the executive team was new, a little less than half. And at the dinner, it was amazing. I mean, but I was sitting there, there's the old, there's the acquired company, and there was the acquirer. And I agree with what Clark was saying earlier when he said, look, there really aren't, this is me paraphrasing, there really aren't mergers, there's really only acquisitions. And the teams were sitting in different spots. When the new CEO came in, people didn't even get up to shake her hand. I mean, and the companies were sitting on separate sides of the table, and it was a tense dinner. And it was political, and there was a lot of sense of people sort of jockeying for position, having things close to the vest. And by the end of the 2 days, so we spent 2 days kind of talking about addressing the elephant in the room, and addressing the fact that the internal part, the team was a totally different team. If you had observed the team at the end, you could not tell who is from what company. People were bringing up real issues, challenges. They were collaborating. You didn't know what function. If you, again, were just observing and you didn't know the functions, everyone was talking as if they were an owner of the company. There was tremendous buy-in. People were vulnerable. People were saying like, look, I'm not sure I'm going to continue to stay in the company because I really want to, I really want to run a company. And I'm disappointed that I'm not, I wasn't chosen to be the CEO. So I just want to be upfront about that. And I'm going to completely support this. I'm going to completely support everything I can, but I do want you to know kind of this is my long-term plan. So people were having that level of open conversation because there was a person who was going to do that. There was a CEO, the second CEO had a plan to actually leave, and he just let people know that. And we planned around it. So, anyway, so it was amazing though to see at the beginning, literally sitting in different places, no one getting up to even shake the new CEO's hand. And by the end, people laughing, people drinking together, people just being really open, honest, and authentic, and talking about the real issues and challenges.
Hey, David,
Okay.
can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question?
Yep.
So oftentimes on M&As, there's a lot of focus placed on the executive team about getting in sync and then, together we're going to march forward and get everyone behind us. How do you approach the non-executive leadership team or, others in the organization? I mean, I know a shipping department manager that can derail an M&A in a heartbeat just based on their knowledge of the process that we wouldn't have at the executive level. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chuck. Well, so in this example, first we start with the executive team because you could imagine the executive team is literally on 2 different camps, right? So first we had to get that team healthy, aligned, and excited about, the challenges ahead and aware of it. After that, what we did is we started working with each of their teams. So we worked with, we had another offsite with then the finance department. We brought in all of product and development, the 2 teams, and it was a large group, and we did a similar process that we did with the executive team with each of these teams. And again, where we offsite, they're coming together, meeting each other, following the process that we're about to walk you through. And so that was the initial piece to create that alignment. And then there's follow-on work as needed. But I think the first piece is like bringing everyone together and introducing them to some tools that actually get them, that actually address the internal part, as well as the external part too. There's a piece of this too that has to do with planning, but you can't start with the plan. You have to start with the internal.
Yeah.
And
Got
Chuck, just another to add on, a couple of people were talking about this. You want to have a shared language of leadership as well. And that works. You're kind of creating the language as part of this process, and part of what we're doing here with tools. The reason why we use tool sets is these tools are to basically have people be able to train each other on, here's how we run a meeting, here's how we build trust, here's how we listen to each other, here's how we communicate, here's what communication means. these kind of shared, we're creating that shared language across the company as part of this work.
And 100%, right? You have this, but you actually have to integrate this throughout the entire company. And it can't even, it's not just the leaders of of those departments, right? Because when you, like in this case, the company, we didn't bring together, all, 600 people, right? We brought together all the people who were managing people and then gave them the tools. And then the instructions were, okay, now use this with your team. And, we can support you in that. Okay, so look, we're going to transition now, and now we're going to get really tactical and really give you some how. So we talked about, the big, kind of the data, the challenges, how we really have to see these as the two different types of challenges, technical and adaptive. Now we're going to get very tactical into the how, like specifically what you would do to make sure that your M&A is successful. So so we're going to get into details of this, and this is generally the map of what it looks like. Okay. And you'll notice it's a circle, and it starts at building trust, then in getting oriented to where you are, identifying technical and adaptive challenges, delegating who owns which technical challenge, learning your way forward, and building alignment. These are the steps, and we're going to get into specifics of these. Okay. So here we go.
Great. Okay. So we've got not a lot of time to give you a pretty robust toolkit that I guarantee if you're applying it on your teams, you'd get better this week. That's why our book is called Be a Better Team by Friday. These tools really do make things better very quickly. So whether you're doing M&A or you're just working on an executive team, these will be very valuable tools. And these are tools we're going to send to you. So I'm not going into deep dive of how to apply, how to practice each one. I just want to give you the overview, and you'll also receive the tool. So when we talk about trust, building trust, why is that our first step? It's always the first step. Pat Lencioni, author of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, #1 team dysfunction when you have low trust. So when that executive team that David was talking about was in the room and they weren't even shaking hands with the CEO, well, there was nothing that was possible for that group until they addressed this. Nothing at all. There's no way that anything was happening. Google's Aristotle project found that psychological safety is the #1 indicator of a high performance team. And that is, of course, if you don't have the safety to be able to say new ideas without getting demeaned or put down, you're not going to get a level of trust in that team where in this environment where we don't know what we don't know, there's changes that we can't even see the problems to. Everyone has to be able to share openly and have the real conversations about what's in the way and not just be too nice. So how do you build a trust on a team where people don't know each other that well and do it quickly? This is one exercise that creates psychological safety quickly when it's done well. It needs to be led by the CEO or COO of the team or whoever the team lead is, because you have to model this kind of vulnerability-based trust. A willingness to be vulnerable is what opens up others to be vulnerable. It's called the lifeline. And any of you who've been in these kinds of forums, you may have done something like this before. We call it the getting real exercise, because you want to be able to get to the point where you can be real with each other, where you can just talk about what you need to talk about without worrying about what people are thinking or doing behind your back. So a very simple way to do this. You draw a line on a piece of paper and write 3 dots above the line, 3 highlights of your life, and below the line, that's right, EO does this. Below the line are 3 low points in your life, and then you go around the circle, and each person is going to share, and everyone's listening to those life highlights and low points. And in the process, just being open to hearing how human everybody is. And it's remarkable what starts to happen. We did this. We were working with a company that was basically started to turn private infrastructure companies into one large public company. So there were 3 companies brought together under the umbrella of one major infrastructure player. 3 construction consulting companies. This is not light and fluffy work. These are very hard-nosed executives coming in the room. All 3 of the teams were the executive teams of their own companies. the CEO of the umbrella company brought us in to help that merger at the very beginning. So the very first thing that we did with these guys was we sat in a room and we had 30-year tenure executives all doing this exercise, writing down their highs and lows. And the CEO started, and he shared from his heart what was there for him and what he'd been through. And it just completely changed the dynamic of that room. They went around, every single person shared. There were tears in the room. There was just there was a sense of gravity to what they were doing. They got that what they needed to do was to connect really quick. Well, two years later, the company went public. That CEO said it was because of that first day and that exercise that we were able to move our values forward and our alignment forward far faster than we could have without it. There was no way we would have done what we did without having done that first. So this is a very important first exercise. All right, let's look at the next exercise. Getting oriented to where you are right now. So that's kind of as you move through the circle of building trust. And so a lot of times people have problems with stuff and they just want to get into action. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. How do we fix this? Oh, we got an issue between marketing and engineering. Go fix it. But with an adaptive challenge, rushing to fix things within a technical challenge like that, with a technical solution, is going to cause more of the problem that you don't even know is happening. So on an executive team, on any team that you're on, as many people as there are in the room, there are that many perspectives about how it's going right now and what's going well and what's in the way. There's as many perspectives on the executive team as there are people. And if you as an executive team do not have the capability to integrate all of those perspectives, or if when these perspectives come up and they just turn into arguing back and forth, you got to take a step back. What Harvard's Professor Ron Heifetz calls getting on the balcony to address the adaptive challenges. You got to get on the balcony and to be able to take a look at where you are without jumping in to try to solve all the problems. Do you even know what the problems are? And so a way to do this, it's very simple. If you're in a meeting room, you got a flip chart and you're just saying, okay, tell me now what's going well. And then you write it out. Everybody's saying, here's the things that are going well. Well, we've got a great speed going on right now in operations. Things are really moving quickly there. We've got, there's a lot of excitement over in marketing about this new initiative that's going on. So you're just talking about all of the things that you're seeing that are going well, you're writing them down. And then you're talking about what's in the way. And now you're saying, here are all the challenges that we see. And the rule of this is nobody argues with anybody. So somebody's going to say, well, I think what's in the way is that we've got a problem over in engineering. Well, that engineering CTO can't be saying, no, that's not the problem. That's not what I think. Nope. You just write it out. Okay. That's what someone sees. And you get everybody's issues up on the chart. And then also one thing that you can also do is start to address solutions. So any ideas and solutions, you can write them out before getting into action. We call them even better ifs. So, but just basically you want to get on the balcony and do this. The importance of this is that you can have what's called a level 10 conversation. You can get high heat talking about in the ways without the argument. One time we were working on a project, we were doing this exercise, and there's what's called an elephant in the room on the team. And there were 50 people in this room. Do you know what an elephant in the room is? You guys know what an elephant in the room is? Yeah. An elephant in the room is sitting right next to you, and it's giant, and it's big, and it's got the huge tusk, but nobody is willing to talk about it.
In Canada, they call it the dead moose on the table. That's often that expression.
Shared language thing there. So the elephant or the dead moose on the table. When there are unsaids, those unsaids fester. And they don't not get talked about. Where do you think unsaids get talked about? Elephants in the room get talked about everywhere else but the table where it needs to be talked about. Everywhere else but the table it needs to talk about. So we're working in this one team, and 50 people in the room, they're saying all the things that are in the way. We've heard them all before. And then I say, so if you had 3 beers right now and you were sitting at happy hour, then what would you say is in the way? And that totally silences everybody. Now everybody's thinking, okay, all right, what would I say? And in this case, they're saying, well, the CEO is getting in the way of every single decision that anyone tries to make. They're not allowing it to happen. And you could just hear it. It's quiet. Now, here are the two options that CEO could have done in that moment. One, that is simply not true. I do not do that. That is not true. And what happens to step one, build trust? All of it goes away. But in a level 10 conversation, when you can have these 10,000 feet conversations, everybody's willing to hear it. And in this case, what he did was he said, wow, I had no idea. I'm going to take that on. Let's figure out how to change it. And that's an adaptive challenge because he's got to figure out, well, what are all the pieces that need to change for him to be able to let go of that? So that's the kind of conversation you want to have. Let's go to the next tool. Here's here's an example of kind of the sort of things you're going to see and what's going well. These are, talented people, great momentum growth, interaction among all teams and collaboration, the product market fit. Kind of get the idea of what's going well. Let's see the next slide. And then what's in the way? And we're giving you instructions. We're actually of how to do this exact thing. We're giving you instructions. It's coming in a packet. You just got to give us your email. We'll send you the packet. But here's what you're going to do. Once you've gotten all the list in the way, instead of just trying to fix everything, first you got to identify which of the problems are adaptive and which are technical. So the cultures are different and need to be integrated. That's an adaptive challenge. Nobody's going to be able to just solve that one. The impact of COVID on the supply chain. We worked in a lot of situations where COVID was really, really quite disruptive. Nobody knew how to do this. Nobody ever done that before. These are adaptive challenges. But then you've got some technical challenges, the lack training in behaviorally based interviewing. Well, there's somebody who can do that training. So you put a T next to that, and then you make sure there's a who does what by when. John gets pricing for training by March 1st. And if that's not there, you're not doing work here. You got to have a delegation to every single technical challenge. Okay, let's move through that into the next one. And then you're going to learn your way forward. And this is key. This is really where you start to break down the silos that come from M&A. When we work in a room where people have long-standing tensions, one of the first things that we do, and I was telling you that story that I was in the room earlier, and after the end of the day, you saw conflicts dissolve. This is how we did it. So you, as a leader inside of M&A, we want you going out and actually soliciting feedback on a day-to-day basis. Ideally, you're having a concerted effort to talk to the key stakeholders in different silos, so that you're able to learn new points of view as part of your way to lead the team forward. And there's adaptive challenges that you've identified with you need to go learn more from the employees that are working in your company. You need to go get their input on what they're seeing related to the adaptive challenges, identifying the stakeholders, and then going out and actually soliciting their feedback. And the way this feedback works is you're not giving them feedback. You are going and asking, from your perspective, tell me how I'm doing as a leader. Tell me what's going well, and it could be even better for me as a leader. And then you're asking about the team, about your executive team, get information about the executive team. Then you're asking about the challenges you're seeing, specifically related to the adaptive challenge you're trying to solve. So you're going out and you're getting as much feedback as you can, setting these up quarterly, making sure that you're talking to the stakeholders, making sure that you're talking to different perspectives. And you'll often see that your perspective starts to expand the more and more that you do this. Then you're coming back into your executive team. And that's where you come together with the data that you're acquiring as a whole team and starting to say, okay, now we're seeing the challenges for what it is. We're expanding our perspectives. How do we now start to move forward on some of these? And then that's where we'll kind of move forward. And
we were called in to work with a marketing team post M&A, and there was this huge blow up had happened. But the thing about the blow up is that had they been doing listening tours, people could tell you what the issue is. Like people knew that the superstars, they knew which superstars were about to leave. They knew which of there were people on the team, there were managers and that were fairly toxic. And if there were initiatives that were not landing the right way, that weren't understanding the business as a whole. Everybody knew the executive team, because they weren't doing these listening tours. And when you do this, you have all this information about what the issues are, where to focus, and how you can avoid a huge amount of problems, because you address it at the beginning. You hear it and you say, okay, great, let's get in a room and start solving the stuff, start working through this.
And then you're going to be moving into building alignment with what you're learning, with what you're seeing. You want to make sure that you, especially in an M&A environment, if you have the different company executives on your executive team, that you're creating strategy that is really considering the adaptive challenges, and that you're all aligned behind one coherent strategy. We recommend strategy be simple, one page. As much as you can do that, keep it very simple, so that if we come into an executive team room and independently ask, hey, what do you think the strategy is? Every single person gives the same answer, which is a great question for you now, even if you're not doing an M&A. If we were to walk into your office today and ask each of your executive team members, what is your strategy this year? Would everyone give the same answer? And that's just a root of misalignment spread if that's not happening.
You can't have the strategy conversations until you have trust, so people can actually bring what the real issues are. So that's kind of why we start with the building trust. So you need people to have the real conversations in the room, and then this is key. And it's key not just with the executive team, but it's also key, as we were talking about with Chuck, about with the other teams as well, with talking to development, talking to the people department, talking to finance, and making sure that everybody is clear what the big picture is, what's the why. And the why can't just be about, when you're talking to your funder, you're talking about the financial impact. When you're talking with the company, you have to talk about something beyond the financial impact. So I'm aware that we're at the hour, and some people may have another meeting they have to go to. We're gonna move into Q&A soon. But if you would like our tools, feel free to put your email in the chat, in case you have to drop off. Just feel free to do that. And that just allows us to know who to send it to. Or you could also just take a picture of that QR code. So and if you have to drop off, you can connect with us on LinkedIn, and happy to send you these tools. So, but I do want to go into Q&A and hear, what are your thoughts, questions? Disagreements?
Don't be bashful, COOs out there. Let's hear. I'm going to start giving out books for questions. How's that?
Yep.
About a better team by Friday. I'll honor that pledge. If you ask a question in the next 20 minutes, I'll send you a book.
And feel free to challenge us, guys. Feel free to challenge too. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I guess a real tactical question, Justin and David. When you're talking about, kind of the executive team of both companies, right? The acquirer and the acquiree, and you've identified who's sticking around. What would you suggest as timing for that first, kind of that get real exercise?
First meeting. That's
Okay,
like when we did this, the deal closed. There was a meeting. It was the first time that people had met in person. Obviously, they had met, virtually through Zoom. In this case, the teams were very dispersed. In that first meeting, that's when we did it. Because, and Matt, part of what's going on is that there's so many hard conversations that need to happen, and you really need the full power of the team. And so right away, people are basically having these really safe conversations. And oftentimes it's political, right? It's like, hey, I'm kind of jockeying for position a little bit. And so right away, you need to create that trust so you can actually have the level 10 conversation where you can talk about what are the real issues, what are the hardest things, because otherwise people just go and they default to, the simple stuff, that you kind of don't really even need to talk about. It's just there are executives in the room. You sort of know how to do the simple stuff. It's the hard things that you need to that you're coming together to solve.
And Matt, as far as the amount of time, it's a significant meeting. I mean, it could take 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours, and you don't want to be doing anything else during that time.
Yeah. And with the executive team, the way our recommendation is actually you do the entire team as one. When you're working with, when you start doing this with larger teams, you have to split up into smaller groups. But for the executive team, in this case, it was about 8 to 10 people. And so.
Fiona, could we stop recording just so if we want to get a little bit more into